You've spent the last 3 hours planning to start the thing you were supposed to start yesterday, making lists about the lists you need to make, organizing your workspace for the 5th time this week, researching the perfect productivity system that will finally fix you, watching videos about how other people with ADHD manage to function like actual human beings. And now it's dark outside, and you haven't done a single thing you were supposed to do, and you hate yourself with a visceral intensity that people without ADHD will never understand, because they don't know what it's like to be trapped inside a brain that has 1,000 tabs open at once, that can hyperfocus for 6 hours on the wrong thing, while the important thing sits there screaming for attention, that knows exactly what needs to be done and still physically cannot, make the body move toward doing it, and the gap between thinking and doing, between knowing and executing, between wanting and actually starting has become so wide that you've started to believe you're fundamentally broken in a way that no amount of understanding or diagnosis or medication will ever fix. You have 17 unfinished projects scattered across your life like abandoned crime scenes. Each one started with genuine enthusiasm, with absolute certainty that this time would be different. This time you'd actually follow through. And then 3 days later or 3 weeks later, the dopamine ran out, and the project became invisible to your brain, literally ceased to exist in your awareness until months later when you stumble across it and feel that crushing wave of shame about being someone who starts everything and finishes nothing. You can't keep a planner because you forget the planner exists. You can't maintain routines because routines require consistency. And your brain experiences time like a broken clock that skips hours randomly. You can't just do it, like people keep telling you to, because just doing it requires an activation energy that your brain doesn't produce on command. And so you sit there, paralyzed, thinking about the thing, obsessing about the thing, feeling anxious about the thing, doing everything except the thing because starting feels impossible, and you don't understand why it feels impossible when other people just start things without this elaborate internal negotiation, without needing perfect conditions and the exact right mood, and 17 preparatory steps before you can even approach the actual task. You've developed elaborate systems to trick yourself into functioning, downloaded every app, tried every technique, bought the fancy planner and the productivity books and the focus music and the supplements that promise to help, and some of them work for a week, maybe 2 if you're lucky. And then your brain gets bored of the system, and suddenly it's invisible too. Another thing you meant to keep doing but forgot existed. And now you have a graveyard of abandoned productivity methods that just makes you feel more defective, because if even the ADHD-specific solutions do not work for you, then clearly you're broken beyond repair. You're either doing nothing because you can't start, or doing everything at once because you can't focus, or doing the wrong thing, because your brain decided that reorganizing your entire bookshelf is more urgent than the deadline that's due tomorrow, and there's no middle ground, no sustainable pace, just this exhausting oscillation between paralysis and chaos with no control over which one you'll get on any given day. You spend more energy avoiding the thing than it would take to actually do the thing. You know this logically, you can see the irony, but knowing it doesn't change it, because the avoidance isn't logical, it's neurological. It's your brain's threat detection system treating a simple task like it's a predator you need to escape from. And so you scroll, you research, you clean, you do literally anything that produces instant dopamine because your brain is desperate for dopamine. And the task doesn't offer any, at least not until it's finished. And finished is too far away for your brain to care about. Your brain only cares about now, only responds to immediate consequences, which is why you can't start the important thing until it becomes urgent. Until the deadline is so close that panic finally provides the activation energy that motivation never could. You hate living like this, hate being unreliable, hate disappointing people, hate disappointing yourself most of all, hate that you can spend 6 hours being interested in something completely irrelevant, but can't force yourself to spend 20 minutes on the thing that actually matters. And everyone tells you it's about discipline, about willpower, about just trying harder. But they don't understand that trying harder with ADHD is like trying to run faster with a broken leg. The effort doesn't fix the dysfunction. It just makes you more exhausted and more convinced that you're the problem. Your brain doesn't produce enough dopamine naturally, and dopamine is the neurochemical that drives motivation and reward seeking, and the ability to do things that aren't immediately interesting, which means your brain is essentially running on empty most of the time, desperately seeking anything that will provide a hit of dopamine to feel normal. And that's why you can hyper-focus on the interesting thing, but can't even start the boring necessary thing, because interesting provides dopamine and boring doesn't, and your brain literally cannot prioritize based on importance. It can only prioritize based on interest or urgency or novelty, and this isn't a choice. This isn't you being difficult or self-sabotaging. This is your brain's operating system running on different code than neurotypical brains, and no amount of understanding that code makes it suddenly start running normally. The reason thinking doesn't lead to doing in your brain is because there's a broken bridge between intention and action, between the part that plans and the part that executes, and every time you sit there trying to force yourself to start, You're essentially standing at the edge of that broken bridge trying to will yourself across a gap that requires different tools than willpower. And the more you fail to cross it, the more evidence your brain collects that you're incapable, that you're lazy, that you're broken, and that evidence makes the gap even wider, because now you're not just fighting the neurological dysfunction, you're fighting the shame and the learned helplessness and the anxiety about failing again. And this is why understanding ADHD sometimes makes it worse, because now you know why you're failing. But you still don't know how to stop failing. And that knowledge without solution is its own special torture. Here's the brutal truth that changes everything if you can accept it. You cannot think your way into doing. You cannot plan your way into action. You cannot understand your way into execution, because the pathway from thought to action in your brain is fundamentally broken, and trying to use the broken pathway more intensely or more intelligently just means hitting the same wall harder. What you need is a completely different approach that bypasses the broken bridge entirely, that tricks your brain into doing before it has time to think about doing. That removes every single obstacle between impulse and action, so that the window of motivation, which in your brain lasts approximately 30 seconds before it disappears, can actually result in something tangible instead of just another intention that never materializes. So here's what you actually do when you need to stop thinking and start doing with an ADHD brain that treats every task like an impossible mountain. You completely abandon the idea of planning or preparing or getting ready to start. Because all of those things are just sophisticated forms of avoidance that your brain has convinced you are necessary, and instead you commit to what I call the 3-second rule, which is that the moment you think about doing something, you have exactly 3 seconds to physically move your body toward doing it, before your brain has time to generate all the reasons why now isn't the right time, why you should research it more first, why you need to do 17 other things before you can start this thing, and those 3 seconds bypass the broken bridge. They bypass the planning paralysis, they bypass the need for perfect conditions, and they get your body moving before your mind can sabotage you. You're not committing to finishing the task. You're not even committing to doing the task. You're committing to moving toward it for 3 seconds, to putting your hand on the laptop, to opening the document, to picking up the phone, to standing in front of the thing you've been avoiding. And 90% of the time, once you've started moving, once you've broken the inertia, once you're in proximity to the task, your brain will just continue, not because you suddenly have motivation, but because continuation is easier than initiation, because your brain's resistance is strongest at the starting point and weakest once you're already in motion. You make everything external, visible, impossible to forget, because your brain cannot hold tasks in working memory the way normal brains can. So if it's not in front of your face, it literally doesn't exist. You put the thing you need to do directly in your path, so you physically cannot avoid encountering it. You set up your environment so that doing the thing is easier than not doing the thing. You remove every single barrier between impulse and execution, every login screen, every search for supplies, every decision point that gives your brain an opportunity to redirect, because your brain is looking for any excuse to do something else, and you need to make doing something else harder than doing the actual thing. You stop waiting for motivation because motivation is not coming. Motivation is a neurotypical luxury that your brain cannot produce on demand, and instead you rely on external pressure. On artificial deadlines, on body doubling where someone else's presence tricks your brain into functioning, on treating yourself like a toddler who needs immediate rewards and constant redirection, because that's essentially what your executive function age is compared to your actual age. And there's no shame in needing external structure when your internal structure is broken. There's only the practical question of what actually works versus what you wish would work. You finish what you start, not by being someone who finishes things, but by starting things so small that finishing them takes 3 minutes, by redefining what counts as finished, by celebrating the completion of microtasks instead of holding yourself to neurotypical standards of what constitutes an achievement, because your brain needs more frequent dopamine hits than normal brains do. And if you wait until the big thing is finished to feel successful, you'll never feel successful, but if you count every tiny step as its own victory, your brain gets enough reward to keep going. You will always be someone who thinks more than does, whose brain generates 1,000 ideas, for every one that gets executed, whose internal world is infinitely richer than your external output. And that's not failure. That's not something to fix. That's just the reality of having a brain that's optimized for exploration and novelty and non-linear thinking instead of systematic execution. And the sooner you stop trying to be someone you're not, the sooner you can become someone who actually functions within the constraints of who you are, which is someone whose brain works differently but still works. Someone who needs different tools but can still build things. Someone who will never stop overthinking but can learn to do anyway, imperfectly, chaotically, but actually, really, finally doing instead of just thinking about doing forever.